Okay, so we close to the Purim, and we are Bez Hashem Yisbarach closing in on these special days in between Purim and Pesach, opportunities of growth, testing our nerves. As you can tell, I am back to basics here with the big notebook. You see, in life you try everything out and then you come back to your original thing and you realize, it's like when you go into the shoe store and you try on 1,000 pairs of shoes and you realize the only one that you're really comfortable in is the ones that you came with. Yisrael Rebbe, Zecher Tzadik Levracha, whose yard site was today, he said, Kasha zivugan shaladam kekriyas yamsach, that to find our mate is as difficult as kriyas yamsach. A lot of different pshatim in that. A lot of people get pushed overboard in the process, but it says that according to at least one sheet, that when the Yidden went into the Yamsuf and they went into the Red Sea, they actually did a semicircle and they came back out on the same side they went in. When a person sometimes starts the shidduch process, so he begins to think, he has all sorts of ideas. At the end, he comes back to what he originally started out with, but you have to go through the process. In the course of our lives, there are times that we think that something that's far off, something that's remote, something that's overseas, that has to be great. If only I had that. What does it say? If the grass is greener on the other side of the fence, do a better job of watering your side. Sometimes we look at something which is very far, and we say, if only I had that. I said, you look at the Haggadah, and you say, look at those shemos. Only I knew Kabbalah, right? I wouldn't have to sit down and break my head over Rabbi Kiva and learn Taisus. If I knew Kabbalah, 1, 2, 3, flash, and I can do all sorts of miracles on my son, would be great, right? So you see these shemos in the Agadah, the Tzach, Hadash, Biachav, and you go to a big Mekubal, they say, can you reveal the secret to me? He says, yeah. He says, what are they? He says, Makas, that's what they are. You have to work yourself slowly. If you're up to the level of Kabbalah, you're up to the level of Kabbalah, but you got a long way to go before you get there. So the emes is that in the course of a person's life, we've discussed this many times. It says, Tinik Bav, a kicker biyada, a baby is born with a piece of bread in his hand. To the last penny, it's been decreed what you're going to have in this world. And also, every ounce of pleasure. I don't know how exactly pleasure is measured in Shemayim, gigabytes or something along those lines, but whatever amount of pleasure you're supposed to have, that you're going to have in your lifetime. And Rahman al-Itzlan, whatever amount of agmas nefesh or difficulty or tzara that a person is going to have to endure, the challenges, may Hashem protect us, we will also have in our lifetime. So from the cry of birth till the death throes, Rahman al-Itzlan, nothing happens that wasn't bashert. So what is the difference between a person who engages in an aveira or not? If at the end you're going to have the same amount of pleasure, the answer is that's exactly the point. After 120 years, we're going to come up there and they're going to show us our portfolio. And we're going to see, oh, wait a second. Whatever amount of pleasure I was supposed to have, that I would have had regardless. Right. So either they're going to say, you had the patience and the perseverance to wait to get that pleasure through a Geshmaka Shmonesrei, through a Geshmaka davening, putting kaiches into your kids and your Shabbos table. So as a result, not only did you get the pleasure, but we're now going to reward you for it, or you took it when you weren't supposed to and you're going to have to pay for it. So that's going to be the most frustrating, and that's going to be Gehenna. Gehenna is when you say, wait a second, I didn't gain anything by engaging in the chait, by engaging in the sin. I would have had that pleasure anyway. And I would have gotten paid for it, and now I'm going to have to pay for it? Yeah, no, that's the way it goes. I read a report someplace that the Metropolitan Transit Authority is struggling very hard with the rat population that is continuing to grow in the subway system. It bothers them because these rats don't pay fare, you understand, and they just raise the fare and they're losing it out. So they're trying to get the rats to eat a certain poison, and it's not going. So they have a bunch of chemists trying to figure out, they're taking the best of the foods that people leave over on trains, and this poison has to taste a little bit better than that in order to get the rats to go for it. Now, I don't know if this is going to work or not, but it's a pretty scary thought when something tastes a little bit better. And you have suddenly this taiva for something, if only I can see that, if only I can do that. That's something I never experienced before in my life. But that's what the rat is saying. And he may not be extremely happy when time comes to it. Rav Shlomo of Zavil once told his assistant, his gabbai, he says, what are you so upset about today? He said, I lost my gold watch. He said to him, did you have an extra pleasure in the last couple of days? He said, yeah, they got new drapes. He's going around. He's so happy with these new drapes. I just want to tell you, it doesn't necessarily mean you did something wrong that you lost your watch, but there's a balance about how much simcha you have. And if you overindulge in one thing, it comes off the other thing. So, of course, this leads us with a practical question. So what does that mean? It means that I can't lease a new car because I'm going to enjoy it? Is there something wrong with that? We've discussed earlier. Shamshon Fol Hirsch says that he brings the Yerushalmi that we're going to be, my father used to share this with me, we're going to be punished. Hashem is going to say, I created the beautiful Swiss Alps, and I created these spas, and of course, if it's a B'tahara, and why don't you go enjoy yourself? I gave you pleasure in this world. And the Nazir is called a Chotei, is called a sinner, because he engages in unnecessary tzar. So the answer is that the Rabbi Shalom wants us to work this way. The Rabbi Shalom wants us, when we're down, to get out there, spend money on ourselves, of course, b'derech heter, and to enjoy life. And when you're not in the mood of having a Geshmaka Shabbos, and you say Shabbos is Shabbos, and you go to Meal Mart and you do what you have to do, and you come home with those peklach, and you come home from the bakery and you let it all out, you say, what's the simcha? He says, the simcha, I was in a down mood before Shabbos, so we are going to have this 8-layer cake, and it's going to be really geschmack, considering that right now most people are fasting throughout the week because ovens are being dismantled. And we're going to enjoy life. And then there are times when you feel that you're making the hachanos to Shabbos. It says that Machloikis by Shammai and Hillel, that Shammai used to buy everything l'kavod Shabbos, and he found something better, he bought it. So somebody is or that was Shammai bought everything the other way around. Shammai bought everything only l'kavod Shabbos, and Hillel would Baruch Hashem Yom Yom. So you want to paskin like Hillel. So today I buy a big cake l'kavod Shabbos, eat it. The next day I buy a bigger cake l'kavod Shabbos and eat it. All right, and you feel that you're getting a little bit overindulging in taiva, if it's cake or something else, and you say, wait a second, I got to realize, what am I doing? There's a price to pay for taiva. So in other words, what the Rabbi Shalom is saying, I want you to work it out. I want you to use both the pressure, the inhibiting taiva, as well as engaging in taiva seheter in such a way that you are balancing yourself. So I saw today an amazing, I'm serious about this, an amazing idea that someone had for Pesach. Rent a shtreimel. Yeah, you can rent a shtreimel for Pesach. A lot of people are concerned over Pesach that their shtreimel, which may have been put down on the table, or, it's a hot day and you wave it back and forth, and they have taken in some chametz or something. So instead of putting your shtreimel in a washing machine before Pesach, which is the fur hat that Hasidim wear, you can rent a shtreimel for Pesach. How's that? And the Emes says there was a famous story by Rabbi Yosef Chaim Zanefeld where there was a chassin, a Yerushalayim dik chassin, and right away there was a little uneasiness between him and his new kala, his new wife. My house is frummer than your house. No, we're more frum than you. No, we have more chumras than you have. And they're trying to put their chumras on a scale to see who can out chumra too. And it was like, I have to eat by your father's seder. I never ate by anyone else's house on Pesach. Your parents do that. Oh, they don't cover this. Oh, this, that. And it started getting very tense. And the mother-in-law brings out the soup. And the chassan looks inside. And lo and behold, there is a piece of flour, of wheat, floating around in the soup. And he goes, ha ha! He says, this would have never happened by my mother's house. And he was one happy chassan finding that thing. I am vindicated. I out-chumred you. And she starts crying, and it's Tisha B'Av. And the next day, the father goes to Rabbi Yosef Chaim Zanefeld and says, hey, this is what happens. It never happened to my wife before. There should be a piece of wheat in the soup. It's like, mamash min hashamayim. And now, Rabbi Yosef Chaim hears the whole story. He says, send me your son-in-law. And he sends him his son-in-law. Rabbi Yosef Chaim takes his shtreimel and whacks it. And there's a puff of wheat that comes flying all over. The minhag in Yerushalayim was, they used to throw wheat by a chuppah. And Rabbi Yosef Chaim understood that the wheat came from his shtreimel, not from the mother-in-law's lack of being careful for Pesach. And Rabbi Yosef Chaim told this young chassan, no uncertain terms, don't blame someone else for the wheat in your shtreimel. Okay, so maybe renting a shtreimel is nicht das a schlechter plan. I heard there's all sorts of offers. There's one offer where you get the first 10,000 macaroons that you eat for free. Afterwards, you have to pay per knedel. I mean, you can get a shtreimel fully loaded. It has like rear video, which is really good. I mean, imagine you're walking on the street and you look, and you see everything that's going on behind you. I heard they have some models with built-in GPSs, so you know exactly where you're going. Airbags, which can be very convenient by a tish, you know. An alarm if you try to steal it. You know what it's like? Go to mikveh in the morning, come out in a big place, thousands of shtreimlich, and yours starts ringing. Some with remote control after davening. You know, as soon as you finish aleinu, it starts spinning and gets ready to... They're self-cleaning shtreimlich that you can do. Some have a sunroof. The yarmulke in the middle like pops up and goes out. And then you can rent certain shtreimlich and you have an option to buy it at the end of the lease. But in any event, so there you go. Rent a shtreimel. So I'm not suggesting you should go out and rent your shtreimel or rent a hat for Pesach. But I will tell you that we've mentioned this before. There was a tzaddik in Yerushalayim. His name was Reb Chaim Birim, Zecher Tzaddik Levracha. And I once heard the story from one of his grandchildren that there was a kid, he was a Yasaim, and they married Yerushalayim, and they married him off to there was a difficult Shalom Bayis issue, and basically his wife's family threw him out, and they went after him, and they continued to spread all kinds of bad rumors about him. Mm-hmm. I think we've mentioned the story before, maybe even last week, I don't remember, sorry. If I did, it's a good story to hear again. And he was tzibrochen, even to the point where he was thought he was committing suicide. And Reb Chaim met him Friday afternoon, and he said, you know, the marriage is over, they're spreading all kinds of bad rumors about me, I'm finished. And Reb Chaim said to him, you can't go with that shtreimel into Shabbos. You need a new shtreimel to cover Shabbos. You must have a new shtreimel. He said, that's the least of my problems right now, a new shtreimel, okay? Chaim Brim grabbed him to the shtreimel macher and said, the new shtreimel, on me. Or at least I take responsibility for it. He thought he's out of his mind. I want to commit suicide. I need to commit suicide with a new shtreimel. What's the difference? You know, it says, came Friday before the Zman, he puts on this new shtreimel, and he begins to think, maybe I am a human being, you know, coming into Shabbos. Maybe I do have a new life, and eventually, it wasn't overnight, but he wound up rebuilding his life, and he got married, and he has beautiful children, well-to-do, and he says, you should know, he saved my life. So there are times, I once heard from a very chashuv yid who does not wear a shtreimel to this day, that he once was going to acquiesce to the requests of his family, and he went to purchase one, and he saw someone standing by the mirror and tilting it this way and tilting it that way, and he asked if they can put in a few white hairs, and he walked down and said, I'm not buying it. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't mean to suggest that people that wear shtreimel all are very indulging, or there's no inyan of the mass amounts of people that do it for Kedusha Shabbos. But I meant to say that for him, for this individual, it turned him off. So in our life, whether it's your shtreimel or anything else, there are times you tone down. What's with the mirror? What's with the tilting of the hair? I remember when I was a chassan, and I got my shtreimel, I was really excited. And there's really, we're not getting into the issues of the halachic issues of whether you can look into a mirror or not, if it's lesilbash, but I peeked. Okay? I pulled it out and I put it on, and I peeked into the bedroom mirror to see what I looked like in it, and my father walked in on me, and boy did I get it. That's what the Baal Shem Tov meant, right? That you should put it on, look in the mirror before Shabbos with your shtreimel on. And I said, now, but the emes is that we have to know where we're holding. There are times in our lives, where the Baal Shem says, get out there and buy yourself a new shtreimel. Get out there and buy yourself new shoes, and buy yourself a new hat, and buy yourself a new suit for Yom Tif, and say, this is Yom Tif, and I'm going to dress, I'm going to pick my life up. And there are times where the Rebbeinu Shem says, what are you looking in the mirror for? You have to know where you are emotionally before Yom Tif. If you need to pick up, then the Rebbeinu Shem wants you to indulge, of course, again, beheter. If you feel you're overindulging and your self-esteem is growing by the leaps and bounds, then you underindulge. The Rebbeinu Shem wants us to do things that we are supposed to do. Now, the truth is, if you look at the whole Seder night, there are contradictions. Okay? Many understand the whole Manashtana, the real question is the contradiction. Then on the one hand, you're telling me matzah and morer, that's a sign of lechem oini, of poor bread and bitter herbs. So my message is, hey, tone down. On the other hand, karpas, I'm rich, I have dips, all sorts of dips. You got to be, right, go in and pick all the dips that there are to offer. You need a lot of money for that. They could take out a loan. Almost cost even more than renting a shtreimel, I think. And then you can't rent the dips, you understand. You got to use them. Right? And then Haseba, so I have mixed messages. Some learn that's the kash of the Manishtana. Matzah I'm trying to, what is the message I'm trying to portray? The first day of Pesach always comes out as the same day of Tisha B'Av. The kittel, why do we wear a kittel? So look in the Shulchan Aruch, there's two reasons. One is because of the white, it's a sign of Tahara, you're mamish like a malach, you're an angel the night of the Seder, and the other is in case we get too haughty with the wine, it's a symbol of Avelus. The kittel is what a person wears after 120 years, that and the talis. You know that famous story that Maggid came, he saw a bunch of people on business, and they didn't have enough room for their talis. They just threw on their tefillin, and he got up there and started darshaning. They weren't expecting him at this convention. And he said, Talisul is crying, no one takes me along. And Hashem said, don't worry, one day they're going to go on a trip, and they're only going to take you along, and nothing else. That was his message, right? Some of the Megiddim of yesteryear were a little tough over there. But sometimes you need a tough message, you need an uplifting message. You have to know, I know a certain place in the Hasidic community where there was a problem with vandalizing there were vandals in the cemetery at night. So they made up. One guy was going to sleep there, and if the guys come, he's going to blow his whistle. And the minig amongst Hasidim is actually wear these long white nightgowns for pajamas. And they have these white shlofkappels with, right? So imagine in the middle of the night, these vandals are coming, guy blows a whistle, and all of a sudden from all sides, a bunch of people wearing white nightgowns with pom-poms coming. Boy, those guys were, I think they're still in a state of shock. They just froze. The guy's walking through a cemetery, as we've mentioned many times, and he's petrified. A guy comes and says, come on, don't be scared. Oh, thanks. You'll guide me through? Yeah. I don't know why I'm scared. He says, listen, when I was alive, I was also scared. But, come on, he's really not that worried. Just follow me, and it'll be okay. So, again, here you have the kittel, and the kittel has a mixed message. Is it a sign of being a malach, or is it a sign of, hey, you're not going to live forever? Which one is it? And that is the power of Pesach. The power of Pesach is an ability that we learn how to control our emotions. And we have to know when it's time to buy yourself a new suit and when it's time not to buy yourself a new suit. You have to see where your Yetzer Hara is going and how you have to control it. The Shin of Rav had an Einikel, the Kalashitzer Rav. Kalashitzer Rav was 3 years old, and he saw his grandfather come out. He was wearing his white kittel, and he was going to blow shofar. There was a Pachad Noira, and he said, look, Zayd's going to Karpas. Right? He mixed it up with the Seder. So some people smiled, and the Shin of Rav heard his Einikel say it, and he said, you should know that Karpas and shofar really have the same thing. What does that mean? Karpas and shofar is really the same thing. One is Rosh Hashanah and one is Karpas. So I heard from my Meshgiach Zayin Gesint that both represent the same idea. One of the reasons for blowing shofar, as Rabbeinu Sadia Gaon says, is Iru Yesheinem mi, right? Wake up those that are sleeping. What are you sleeping away your life? Hello, get up. What is the reason for Karpas? That the little children should ask, what's this? Why are we getting dips now before the meal? And they shouldn't fall asleep. So the Shpal Zayda once verheard as he tested his little Einikel when he came home. He said, what did your Rebbe say? He said, Kadesh, the Tata Kimta, Fischel, the Tata comes home, and a Tittun Zan Kittel, he puts on his white Kittel, yeah, and finish off. And you're supposed to say, what? How does it finish off? A Tittus on Schnell, he puts it on very fast, Kadesh, the kleine Kinder sollen nicht anschlafen, so that the little children shouldn't fall asleep. His Rabbi didn't say it. The Rabbi didn't say it. No, he just said the Tata comes home and puts on the Kittel. So he summons the Rebbe, he says, why didn't you say it? Now, I would imagine if the Rebbe said he forgot, okay, he's a human being. But he didn't like the Rebbe's answer. The Rebbe's answer was, well, it's not really so important, it's really not no gaya, the kids are up anyway. And the Shpal Rebbe was livid. Shpal Zayda was very upset. I mean, maybe the Rebbe in those days, he couldn't just do copy and paste with your computer. Your kids come home with whole books that they say by the Seder. That's what Rav Schwab said it. The mitzvah switch from V'gada to Levincha to V'gada to Le'avicha. Right, mitzvah is now you talk to your father. It's supposed to be the other way around. It's supposed to talk to your kids. But we'll talk about that maybe next week. I try in my house, I say, at night, my mitzvah. Okay? Tomorrow, by the day Suda, all the kids line up and say their Torah. So, whatever the case may be, the Shpoel Zayden was very upset. Why did you leave out these words? As the Kleine Kinder sollen nicht einschlafen. He says, you don't tamper with these things. You know what it really means? It means that the Indian of the Kittel is, it's the Rebbeinu Shalom's way of controlling our emotions. There are times in our life where we feel down, and we're depressed, and we're worried, and Hashem says, I want you to have the courage to get out there and buy yourself a new suit, and buy yourself a new shrammel, and get a new car. Haven't passed that sign yet. And there are times in your life where the Rebbeinu Shalom says, hey, hold back, you don't have to indulge in everything. That's the Kleine Kinder sollen nicht einschlafen. You should have the koyach to know when to do what. Now, so what do we say to the Rasha? Hakei es shinav, knock out his teeth. So I heard from my Mishgiach, he touched b'derech drush, of course, Hakei es shinav, knock out his sleep. Wake up. Stop thinking the world is over. I blew it. The word Rasha, if you take out the shin, Hakei es shinav, you're left with the words ayin reish. Air, for him to be able to wake up. Get out there. Now, you know, this is a dar of nisyonos, and we were never tested as we were tested before. But you have to understand something, that in all of the fear, someone told me a great one today. He said a guy had a parakeet, or a parrot, I should say. The parrot was talking nibble peh. Parrot was cursing. And as much as he said to the parrot, no. Parrot kept doing it. So he took the parrot to some veterinarian psychologist, bird psychologist, and said to him, I do my parrot? Oh, hey, you know, you can talk to him. So, you know, he talks to the parrot. The parrot says, I cursed till now, and I'm going to curse now. Keep going. So that he says, listen, this calls for some strict measures. You have to take this parrot, and you put him into the freezer. And you tell him until he stops talking nibble peh, we're going to freeze his mouth. Keep him there for 2 seconds. So all of a sudden the parrot picks him up, he opens the freezer and the parrot is petrified and he closes the door. He opens it up 2 seconds later and the parrot is freezing and goes, you're going to be good? Oh, no wonder, I promise, I'm going to talk only nice things, I promise you, I'm going to be so good, they'll never do this to me again. Okay, come here. And the parrot is still shivering, goes, can I ask you a question? He goes, what? And his wing is shaking and he points to the other part of the freezer and he goes, what did those chickens do? What did they say? You know? Okay? Now, there are times in our life where we are overwhelmed by what happens in front of us and we have to respond accordingly. So Rav Schwab, Zecher Tzadik Levracha, explains very beautifully that the Anshe Knesset Gdoila made davening for us, correct? They made our Nusach HaTfilah. What happened till the Anshe Knesset Gdoila? All of a sudden, then we needed a Siddur. What happened till then? And the answer is, until then, there were Nevi'im. And because there was Nevuah, even though not everybody was a Navi, but you knew how to do, you didn't need a Siddur to daven. You knew what to say. Once Nevuah left, no one knew what to do. Why did Nevuah leave? What happened? One day they shut the lights on Nevuah, pulled the plug. So Rav Schwab says, no, the Anshe Knesset Gdoila took away the taiva to Avodah Zarah. Once they took away the temptation to Avodah Zarah, people lost their nevuah. Because how did somebody gain nevuah? If he was driven to Avodah Zarah and he held himself back, so the reward for that in the void came nevuah. But once they took away the taiva of Avodah Zarah, so Memela, you didn't have the potential of becoming a Navi any longer. But you understand the Yisoid over here. So they had to teach us how to daven. It's true that this generation was never tested like any other generation. What goes on, Rahman al-Islam, what little kids can see in their own homes, and no generation was ever tested. Emes. But, after all is said and done, that means that we can be Zaycha to what no other generation can either. It has to be that way. The generation that had to deal with Avodah Zarah, they were Zaycha to Nevuah. I'm not saying we can be Zaycha to Nevuah. But they're obviously, if you walk into shul and you take out that phone and close it, you don't just put it on vibrate. So it doesn't bother you. It doesn't always work when you put the phone in the same pocket with your keys and it vibrates, by the way. But you close the phone. And because you say, I no messages, no emails now. It's between me and the Rabbi Shalom. Then your tefillah is on a much higher level than someone who doesn't have the Nisayan. And the same is true when you come home and you filter that computer, or better yet, if you don't need the internet, or whatever, everyone on their level. Any Mesiras Nefesh that we do on our part triggers the opposite. It triggers Kiddusha. It triggers the other way around. Now, Pesach is a time of taking inventory on whatever we have. Right? Pesach wasn't just intended to be spring cleaning. Of course, you have to go through every single thing in your house that you had access to the entire year. So who was it? Rabbi Isaac Charif once went by. This guy was such an unbelievable miser, and he saw him cleaning his pockets for Pesach. His pants were out there, and he was saying, you don't have to do that. He says, why not? He says, if you never entered over there with your hands to take anything out to give anyone, there's no chash of chametz. What's the problem? You never put your hands in your pocket to take anything out. So what's where did you go? They say the story of the Galiciana, that there were 2 flies by Galiciana Chasana, southern Poland. For some reason was given the distinction of being somewhat cheap. I don't know if that's a fair thing, but so let's say whoever it applies to, okay? And I guess it applies to all of us to a certain extent. Where they say that Yid calls up the taxi, says, how much is it to the airport? He says, $40. He says, how much is each suitcase? The suitcases are for free. He says, okay, take my suitcases, I'll walk. Right. They say a lot of Jews are getting very nervous because there's talk about discontinuing the penny. That's the great concern about that. So there were these 2 flies. They were together by this chasana, and they make up they're about to fly out. The one guy flies, and the other guy's not there. He doesn't see him till 5 years later. He says, what happened? He says, I flew into the guy's wallet, and what I do? He zippered it, and they didn't open it for 5 years. This is where I am. I was stuck. Okay. But on Pesach, we redo whatever we have. Basically, we go through our cars, and basically Hashem is saying, I want you to take everything you have, and I want you to put it into perspective. Okay? Where are you going in your life? Are you overindulging? Or perhaps you're underindulging. Do you understand what the point is? The point is that you should be in the center, that you should be happy, that you should be where you are, on what level where you are. Now, this is very difficult. So how do I know if I should buy a new car or not? Am I overindulging, underindulging? Am I depressed? Oh, if I'm depressed, I should, right? So how do you get depressed, right? So I can, then I can buy whatever I want. And I guy goes over with a gun to someone and says, do me a favor, hold this against my head, and please say you must eat this ham sandwich, okay? Because I'm really hungry, there's nothing else to eat. So it's like a dangerous way of thinking. Oh, whenever I'm sad, I should buy myself a new suit. So, let me go be sad now, and then I'll do a mitzvah. So you have to be honest with yourself. When is the time that you have to get out there, and when is the time you have to slow down? But there's always one answer that solves this problem. If your mechuven is that what I'm doing is to help other people, if I am buying that car, so I get a chance to give other people rides, if I want to dress nicely in shul because I want my family, I want people to feel a kedushas yom tov around me, then you're always kashering yourself. But you have to really mean it. And the truth is, when you begin to think that way, now we know that there's an inyan that we do shiduchim through a Schachter. As we've often mentioned, Schachter is Rashi Teva, Sheker, Doiver, Kesef, Nikach, that they tend or sometimes deviate from the truth. That's because Shidduchim are Lamail of our Seichel, Rabbi Yaakov Emden says. But there's another inyan in that also, and Tzaddikim were very makbid on this. Dafka to do Shidduchim, at least it should start out through a Schachter, and also to pay Shatchanim. Why? As a matter of fact, he writes, I think, the Maril, that this was the only money that he ever took, and it's the only kosher money that he has. And one of the inyanim is that we know that a Yid brings a carbon shlomin. Somebody once came to the Netziv and he said, you sent me a meshulach from your yeshiva, but I sent him away because I know that he takes a certain percentage. Now it's true, some meshulachim take a tremendous amount. Like they say a story about a meshulach from a certain yeshiva, which will go unnamed at this time. He used to take 99% for himself plus expenses, and the rest went to the yeshiva. So he goes to this rich guy in Mexico, and he's telling him how the yeshiva is in such need. The guy writes him out $1 million check, and this meshulach is dancing, and he says to him, what about for you yourself? He says, I don't need. He was so impressed, he gave him another $1 million for the yeshiva. But we're talking about under normal circumstances, where the meshulach or the fundraiser makes the accepted amount. So this guy came to the Netziv and said, I didn't give it to him because this way I can give it straight to you, so the yeshiva gets even more. So he doesn't take off the accepted 10% that he takes off. The Netziv wouldn't take the money from him. He said, the Rebbeinu Shalom made the world this way, that as we give one thing to another, somebody else in the middle has hana. And you should look forward to that. And he said, one of the Indian, it says that an akum only brings the carbon oila. Why? Well, because there are people that kenish farginin that shlomim, and you should eat. Wait a minute, this is my carbon. It has to be totally kuli kol on the mizbeach. Right. He said, do things in such a way where, and of course, you want to run a business, you want to eliminate the middleman. But the idea is that the more people that gain by something, the more legitimacy something has. What's that story? The guy that came to the town and he said, okay, we got to answer this kasha is going to get my daughter, the rich guy. And he says the kasha, and they all try, and no one gets it. He leaves, and one guy runs after. He says, okay, I won't marry your daughter. Well, please, I want to know the teretz. Right? He says to him, you take my daughter. He said, that was at the end of the story. He says, I don't want your daughter either. Just tell me the teretz. And say, that part of the story people don't say. Now, the answer is, why do we give karpas? Why do we give karpas? Today, and we do so many things. So the little children should ask, why are we doing things different? So really, what's the answer? Why do we do karpas? So the little children should ask. So there's no answer, right? So only the children should ask. So we're doing something weird or strange because we want you to ask, why are you doing strange? So does that mean that there's no answer? So again, I heard from my Meshgiach, no, there's a much deeper concept here. We are teaching children that things will happen in your life that you don't necessarily understand, and that you don't have to understand everything. And there are times we ask, why? Why should I do this? It doesn't make sense. And the answer is, you're right, it does not make sense. Not everything has to make sense. You're doing it because Hashem told it to you. And there's a story about one of the children of the Chassam Sofer that came to the Chassam Sofer and asked him a kasha. It was a certain amunah, philosophical kasha. There are two versions to the story. And one version is that he said, "Just come to me by Keser." And when they said Keser and Shul, he came to his father under the talus and he almost started fainting. He said, okay, I heard enough of the answer. I can't take this anymore. And there's another version, a more simplistic version perhaps, where if some Sofer didn't answer him, and he came back a week later and he answered him. He said, Father, it took you a week to come up with the answer? He said, I could have given you the answer right off the bat. But I wanted you to learn, especially when it comes to Amunah, you don't have to have answers right away. He says, the inyan of the Seder night is to teach children that there are certain things we do, so you should ask. The Rabbi Shalom puts us in certain situations where we ask, why is it happening? You know what, I don't understand this, God, but I'm holding on to you. And that is your tikkun. The purpose is to ask, and that's the karpas. That's why the karpas is an inyan of Kadesh Yishalu Atenoikiyas. It's mamshach bracha. And that's why the Shin of the Rav compared it with blowing shofar. No, there are times people live with uncertainty. There never was a time that people live with karpas. How many people live with tests? Another test 6 weeks down the road. Doctor says, come back in 6 months. There never was a dar that was tested this way. So the Seder gives a koyach of amunah and bracha that life can go on under those circumstances. I'll tell you, earlier this week, I had to speak someplace in Flatbush. It was like snowy, raining that block, and I'm with my van. I'm trying to find a parking place, and you know it is. There's a bunch of cars are behind you, and you finally see a parking place, and you want to back up. No one lets you back in. You know, beep, beep, beep. You know, go. It's like the third time around the block, and every time it brights and beeping behind me. And once I turn around, there's a line of cars behind me, trying to go back to the park. Everyone's beeping except the car behind me, and he's like with his hand, take it easy, relax. So impressed. I said, Flatbush has good people. They have people that say, no, don't push the guy out of you. Give him time, give him room. I wanted to go out of mamish, give him a hoshmus. And I came and I pulled in, and I turned around to see who this tzaddik is. I see it was a yellow taxi. He's on a meter. He's going to slow down, Take it easy, relax. But if we believed that our lives are on a meter, and the Rabbi Hashem is paying us per hour, and the Rabbi Hashem says, right, a taxi on the meter has when you in slow traffic and big traffic. We're doing our best, Rabbi Hashem, to encourage ourselves when we're down, and to slow down when we're overindulging. And the Rabbi Hashem is paying you for that time. You have a lot more patience with everybody. If you know the meter is running and that you're getting paid, and that life has to go on. Now, the emes, it says, the Ber Moshe says that Yidden were counted 3 times. It says when they came out of Mitzrayim, they were counted. When they fell by the Ego, they were counted. And when the Mishkan was put up, we were counted again. And he says in Moyerdiki Yesod, when we first came out of Mitzrayim, each and every one of us had an independent mission. That was very clear. When we fell by the Ego, we basically blew it. The Rabbi Shalom says, now there's another solution. The solution is how we interrelate with each other. The Mishkan drives us together, and the Rabbi Shalom recalculates differently. If the Rabbi Shalom says that Getzel Agroinim has 2 years to live, Chas v'Shalom. However, Getzel Agroinim comes to the minyan every single night, and other people are getting chizik from him. And he has this big smile on his face, and he keeps saying good morning. We recalculate the entire cheshbon on his life. The purpose of the Mishkan was to draw people together, and the fact that we constantly are meeting different people in the course of our lives, and we say, this is Hashgacha Pratis, that this person should call me at this moment, that I should speak to this person at this moment, and we accept the fact that sometimes we have to move on, as we discussed. That's the union of the Mishkan, assemble, reassemble it, so life begins to change. So I think we mention the story once a year, and we should mention it really more than that. The Rebbe, my father used to share it with me. The Chayz of Lublin used to call in all his Talmidim on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and he would tell them on Rosh Chodesh whatever is going to take place for them in the entire month of Nisan. He would tell them the second day of Nisan what's going to take place the entire month of Iyar. On the third day, he told them what's going to take place the entire month of Sivan. Until the 12th day of Nisan, he told them what's going to take place in the entire month of Adar. And he called in once the Rebbe Rabbunan. He said, I know you're a manager for woods. You chop down, you have the rights to chop down the forest. You work for a Yid who rents it from the squire, and you employ hundreds of people, but you should know, I see that you're going to lose your parnasa this year. They're all going to lose their parnasa. That's what it says. And the Rebbe Rabbunan says, okay, we'll see. And it comes that year in the middle of the winter, and it seems the global warming set in early, and the river didn't freeze, and the way they would send the logs down was on the ice, and somehow they couldn't get the logs down, and the mill started buying from someplace else, and everyone lost their parnasa, and if you lost your parnasa, there was no food stamp office, it meant starving to death. And the Rebbe Rabbunan burst into tears, and he said, Rabbeinu Shalom, he said, Yosef was working for his master, and everything worked out okay. He says, I'm not Yosef, but my boss is not Potiphar, so can't we even this out? And he cried like he never cried before, and suddenly he felt a chill, and the water froze, and the logs began flying down. But he had only one kasha. One kasha was, but my Rebbe said I'm going to lose my money. At the end, everyone got their parnasa. So not that he wasn't happy, but like what's with the nevuah? It's always that, that's always a problem, right? What do you do with the prediction when the prediction is not good? And you're happy that it's good, then how do you end for the prediction? And why? It's like that guy that was very frum, and the Arab stopped him, terrorist stopped him, said, I'm going to kill you. And I said, wait, I have to make the bracha. He goes, no, hefstik, no, right, move it, right? Know that story, okay. It's like, you're very happy it didn't happen, but it was supposed to happen, so what's with the hashgacha here? Where did it go? So should he ask my Rebbe or not? So when he came back, before he had a chance to ask the Rebbe, so the Chayzer said to him, that's what my father used to share the story with me. He said, I didn't need with tears. Tears can change everything. But Pshat is deeper than that. There are certain things in our world that are only attainable through us after we meet disappointments and we work our way around it. So Vayikra has a small aleph. Why the small aleph? Says the Svasemis because Moshe Rabbeinu diminished himself in order to connect to Klal Yisrael. I always had this kasha. You ever saw those magazines, that there's a picture of the magazine on the front cover. In other words, whatever the front cover is, right, there's a smaller picture of the front cover. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And in that smaller picture, there's a smaller picture of the front cover. And then there's a smaller picture. So where does it end? Like, how far down does it go? It's endless. The Vayikra with the small aleph means it's endless. So the Svasemis asked the kasha, which we mentioned in previous weeks. Moshe was taught the entire Torah in Shemayim. So what happened now? The kol comes out Bein HaKruvim, and the kol calls out to everybody, and this kol, that kol, Moshe hears it, V'dar b'shem Moshe Leimar, Revach Bein Parasha L'Parasha, to be Mizbayin, and the whole, Moshe already knew the whole Torah. And the answer is, I know Moshe knew the whole Torah, says the Svasemis. That's not what Kosh Baruch was teaching Moshe. Kosh Baruch was teaching Moshe how to give over the Torah. Every V'dar b'shem Moshe Leimar is Leimar. This is how to teach it. So the real Kedushas of Torah is how you give over the Torah. What you know is not as important as what you are willing to give, what you're willing to teach to the people around you. So Vayikra is there with a small aleph. Shoyel and V'darshan V'hilchas. And you look in the Medrash, in Parasha Vayikra, interesting thing. Look in the Medrash. The Medrash goes through all of Moshe Rabbeinu's names. Moshe Rabbeinu with many different names. And at the end, he's called Moshe. Why is he called Moshe? Because it came through Mesiras Nefesh. Bas Pari pulled him out. So in other words, the Medrash in Vayikra is saying that how are we going to be judged? How did you interrelate with the people around you? Interrelating with the people around you automatically lifts everything that you do up until a different level. You get group rate. Shayil and V'darshan behilchas Pesach. How many days before Pesach are you supposed to learn Hilchas Pesach? 30 days before. That's how the Mechaber starts. Kum d'Ramah. He says the minig is to give Ma'as Chitin. Now we know that Ramah usually addresses something that the Mechaber says and takes issue with it. What does the Ma'as Chitin have to do with the darshan of Hilchas Pesach 30 days before? So the Ramah says before you start darshaning Hilchos Pesach, just make sure everyone has matzah. But it's in a deeper Indian. Take a look at the Shayil of the Darshan. How do we know you're supposed to darshan Pesach 30 days before? What does the Gemara say? One reason is because Moshe stood there Pesach Rishon and he was teaching them about Pesach Sheni. So you see 30 days before. So what was Moshe busy with on Pesach? Those who didn't make it into the yeshiva. Those who didn't pass the test. Those that were Tomei couldn't be marked of the carbon Pesach. So what's Moshe Rabbeinu doing on the first Pesach? Can you imagine how many shilos there were on that first Pesach? This paper towel, that paper, can I use, can I have my teeth, the first Pesach. What's Moshe Rabbeinu busy with? Those that didn't make it into the yeshiva. Let me tell you what's going to be Pesach Sheni. So the Kiddush of our lives are measured by how much, how small that aleph is. How much are you willing to give it over to someone else? You know, it comes before Pesach, the tensions in houses rise, families get together, and there are a lot of nisyanos. And the smaller the aleph, the greater the kiddusha. Someone showed me, he didn't show me, I didn't look at it, but he told me about a clip about people that do the wrong thing when they come to be Menachem Avil. So he was saying that, and you've seen this, right? Yeah, so I didn't say it. So they were telling me, the guy, imagine a guy comes there, and he's sitting, oh, never, you... Right, I'm sure you loved your mother very much. Yeah, 1 second, please. Excuse me, right? You know, excuse me. You don't mind, right? Yeah. Mazel tov! Oh, how nice! That's wonderful. Right? Okay. You know. So, what are you saying about your mother? Yeah. Oh, never. Really, she suffered that much. Those Danishes in the back. They Chalav Yisrael. I just want to know if. So, someone told me he heard this clip, and you know something? He went through similar situations when he was sitting shiva. That didn't bother him that much. That was just comical. But when the guy came to him and told him, I think the reason people are dying is because of lack of tznius, that hurt a lot more. It's actually, I know, it's actually a lav min ha-Torah. You're not allowed to go to someone and say, hello, Yerascha Kislesechu is your lack of Yiras Shamayim, which you learned from Eve. Now, Chas v'Shalom, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that we shouldn't increase our level of tznius. But the point is the sensitivity that we have to others. The Rabbi Shalom says, I don't want you to direct people before you feel their pain. Listen to people. Listen to people. I told you many times the story. There was a psychiatrist that went off to a party and he's a shtickle tipsy. He wasn't supposed to drink that night. His beeper goes off. There's a guy about to commit suicide. He needs to talk to him. He says, what does he do now? If he admits he's drunk, he's in trouble. If he goes there drunk and prescribes medication, he could be arrested. So one of the other friends tells him, listen, go and just don't say a word. Don't prescribe any medication, just go. So he goes and he sits there the entire time, and the guy says, I want to jump off the roof. And he's going, Finally, after the hour, the guy gets up, he runs over, he hugs the psychiatrist. He goes, Doc, this was the best session we ever had, he says to him. The Baruch wants us to listen to their people in pain. There's a time to direct people, and there's a time to criticize. Yom Tov is the time to listen. It's not the time to criticize. Yom Tov is the time for Simchas Yom Tov. And the whole structure of the Korban Pesach had to be adjusting. But Shchenim, too many people, you have to break up the family. Too few people, you have to put two families together. It has to be adjusted. The wife of Rabbi Chanina ben Daisa, she's very embarrassed. Everyone else is cooking for Shabbos. There's a neighbor next door that's a big yenta. There's a very thin wall between the two houses. Told you the story many times. Bungalow colony. I was in a bungalow colony when I first got married. Had 3 boys then. They were later the kids. It was $400 for a 1-bedroom bungalow and $800 for a 2-bedroom bungalow. We splurged on a 2-bedroom bungalow. Problem was a very thin wall, and there was nothing left of that wall between the 2 bedrooms. Remember, the bungalow colony owner was a guy that spent although he owned real estate all over the Catskills, he spent 10 hours a day pulling out nails and straightening them out and rubbing off the rust. He was one of those guys. And he came in screaming. He goes, look at this wall. What wall? There's no wall there anymore. The first time the kid chased the other one and kicked him. He goes, there's going to be a change in price here. I said, sure. Now it's a 1-bedroom bungalow, right? Of course there's going to be a change. Anyway, So the walls are very thin. Everyone knew what was going on by everyone else's house. I told you, I told you, I get knocked in the picture, and the neighbor knocks on the door and says, yeah, you just knocked the picture on your wall? Yeah. Mind if I hang my hat on the nail on the other side? Right? Is that okay with you? So here, Rav Chanina ben Daisa's rabbits, and they have nothing. Rav Chanina ben Daisa says, Daila v'kavshel charuvim le'erev Shabbos, and in walks his, this meddly neighbor, and she was so embarrassed that nothing was coming out of her chimney. She puts water on the stove, and she puts grass in the oven, and the neighbor comes in. She knows she's going to open her pots. She's so embarrassed she runs into the next room. And she looks into the oven, and she starts screaming, quick, 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 bring the tool that's used. The challahs are burning, the challahs are burning. She made a mess, it turned into challahs. So she comes running out. She says, yeah, that's what I went in for, to get this little tool. Why was it necessary for her to lie? Say, that's what I went in for. So Zaktas Fas Emes, she knew if she was going through such busha, it had to lead to Yeshua. She could have said to this neighbor, get out of my house, it's none of your business. She said, whatever I have to go through, I have to go through. She's mamish opening her pots. She ran in and said, Rabbi Shalom, such busha. Okay, I'm a kabbalit be'ahava. She felt if I have the courage to do that, there's going to be miracles now. I know there's going to be miracles. There are certain situations on Pesach where people are going to hurt us because families are together. Someone is going to say the wrong thing. And there's going to be, or we're going to go through matzavim where there are questions that have no answers. Hashem, why are you doing this? You should have questions. That's the answer. You should have questions. Yeah, because if you're willing to accept it, you know what happens afterwards. The Rebbe Hashem says, "I can give you bracha that I couldn't give you until now. This is your tikkun." Ba'avir zeh. Rabbi Yaakov Belinsky says, "Amar de Gevart." What did Aaron HaKohen do? How did he make shalom between people? Right? Two guys were fighting. They were killing each other. Let's say Ruvain. Shimon, Terusha! Shimon, so hurt that he hurt you. Really? He's crying all day. He wishes you can be his friend again. Really? Yeah. Then he went to Ruvain and said, but the other way, he said, to Shimon, Ruvain is walking a whole day. I mentioned your name, he got so emotional. He's crying, he wants to be your friend again, really? And the two would meet and they would hug each other. They did it between husband and wife. They did it. So he says, how did Aaron HaKohen do this? Well, sooner or later it would come out that he's lying, He says, human nature, we're so sure it's the other guy's fault that we'll never chaysh him that he's lying. We're so sure it's the other guy is going to have charata, that it plays so much into our psychic, that Aaron HaKohen was used this. So we say, Ba'avir zeh asa Hashem li. When a chassan is mekadesh a kala, he says, Hareat mekudeshes li. What's the word li? Li means, right, only for me. What's that chassan in Williamsburg? He forgot the word li, and the Masad Kedushin is saying, Hareat mekudeshes. No, he doesn't want to say the word li. There's a whole shiloh. He says, they go, So finally one guy goes up there, goes between Bedford and Division. Lee. Mazel tov. Okay. Now, Ba'avir zeh asa Hashem li. The Rosh, everyone, you should know that your matzah every single Pesach, whatever you want to see on the coming into this Yom Tov, kids here, not here, shviga going here, going there, whatever the pressures are, someone's going to say something to you that's going to hurt. I'm willing to ride this through. Your matziv is going to give your Yeshua. Your Nisayan maybe to go out and buy yourself a new suit, or your Nisayan maybe to tone down the new suit. But whatever it is, Ba'avir zeh asa Hashem li, and you have to know what your li is. Answer for yourself, not for someone else. Situations, there are singles coming into Pesach, very, very difficult. Children, or there's no children yet, they're still coming and coming into families. Don't consider yourself a Rachmanis. I am who I am. This is who the Rabbi Shalom made me. It's as easier said to done, and it's very easy to say to someone else, I know. But in a sense, Ba'avir zeh asa Hashem li. Hashem made this Yom Tif for me. And I once had a crazy story. I was calling up with my credit card, and they don't even let you, only voice recognition, which is like terrible, because people, so it's like, would you like, balance please, $10,000. Would you like to pay your balance in full? Meanwhile, my two daughters are talking to each other. Want to come tonight to a Vart? Yeah, sure! Okay, so you're paying your balance in full. What happened? No, that was my daughter talking, no. Okay, your balance has been, no, I'm sorry, you already have a confirmation number, we can't take away Simonish Git, Ba'avir zeh asu Hashem li. The Rebbe Hashem doesn't make mistakes. So the Chassan says, Ariyat Mekadeshes li, and really it's a unit of two people. Why is it Mekadeshes li? And the answer is it's a new interpretation of li.
Li means whatever my nisyonis are going to be with this person is li, was tailor-made for me. And my nisyon is to deal with the situation correctly. Rav Schwab said the Mishkan, right, was on the bottom it was a pear, on the top it was two things that had a tabas around. And it says the Mishkan were toying from the bottom and from on top, so on top you really had to put a tabas around it. They weren't mamish even. That's what held them together. He says that's why we use the tabas by kiddushin, because they're not perfect, but you're going to put this tabas around and you're going to work it. Ba'avizeh asa Hashem li. The Rabbi Shalom knows who we are. Story, one person goes, a famous marshal, one person goes over to someone else and says, here's $50, go to a restaurant, enjoy yourself. Thank you. Comes to the restaurant, doesn't like the food, doesn't like the service. Once I'm going to give, I always waited to complain, you know. Some people have, they're such a no complaining. Walks into the manager and says, I want the owner of this restaurant now. I'm going to that daughter, I'm going to this, I'm going to that, you know, what's this fly doing? And I asked the waiter, what's this fly doing in my soup? What did he say? Right? The backstroke, right? We know that one. Okay. Right? He's angry. And he sees who comes out. The manager, the owner comes out. Who's the owner? The man who gave him the $50. So he says, what'd you come here for? I wanted to thank you for allowing me into your restaurant. That's so nice of you. You know what? Here's another $50 credit. Okay? If we realize that Rabbi Shalom is behind everything, it's all him, and we turn that complaint, switch it around a little bit, the life is full of brachas. Someone told me an amazing about Rabbi Yoshev Zecher Tzadik L'Bracha when he came out of his operation. So he wanted to thank the doctors and thank the Askanim. He was very shvach. They said, you're too weak. He says, I'm chayav to do it. He said, but you're too weak in Oinus, Rachmana Patra. He says, that's on mitzvahs, not on midas. When it comes to midas, there's no patur of Oinus. You have to do what you can. And after, when he came home right after the operation, he said, I have to pay back Klal Yisrael. How am I going to pay them back? I'm going to wake up a little earlier and learn for their schus, more so. The tzaddik thinks, what is my position in terms of someone else? I want to make that person's life a little bit better. I want to be Messiah with a story, which I know we've said before, but I think once a year it's good to remember it. The little girl in Yerushalayim, she's not doing very well. She's okay, but her mother, Rahman al-Islam, is very sick. And it's the first day of Gan, first day of going to school. And what do? This little girl, they tell her brother, take her to school. He grabs her by her pigtails, flies her in, dumps her in. And all the other mothers are coming with the little girls. They're so excited about the first day. And she's sitting, and the teachers know what the situation is at home. And they're like upset, and they're trying to be machazik when nothing replaces a mother. And then she's waiting Nebuch for her mother to come pick her up. And all the mothers come running. How was it? That was everything. And Nebuch, this little girl, she's all alone. The teachers take her home. They want to talk to the father, but they're busy. The mother's sick, and she's just sitting on the stoop. And who passes? Rabbi Yosef Chaim Zanefeld, the great Rabbi of Yerushalayim. And the greater a person is, the more he has time for the small aleph. The bigger the person is, the smaller he has time for the little alephs. And he says to her, Mein Tochter, for was weinst du? Why are you crying? And she says, I want my mama. She wants her ima to take her to the Gan tomorrow morning. So Rabbi Yosef Chaim Zanefeld says, I give you a bracha that your ima should take you to your chuppah. She's a little kid. She doesn't know what this man is talking about. What's a chuppah? She wants her mother to take her to kindergarten. What are you doing? A cup? Anyway, as the years went on, she understood the bracha. She turned 16, 17 years old. Time for her to get married. And the father comes over to this, and you have a sick mother. We're going to try to do our best. Under the circumstances, we have some nice shidduchim for you. She was a very good girl. They knew that she basically did all the work raising the family. Her mother wasn't well, and she starts passing all the shidduchim. Nose too long, nose too short, too much money, too little money, too much yichus, too little yichus. What are you doing? You have 8 siblings behind you. Let them go ahead of me. Almost unheard of in Yerushalayim. All of them go ahead of her. It's 10 years later. She's already considered an older girl, especially in Yerushalayim, and they do shidduchim for her, but they have to compromise, whatever that means. I don't want to get into it. Father says, why'd you do this? Right after the Sheva Brachas, her mother passes away. And she throws herself down on the mita of her mother, and she bursts into tears. And she goes, Mama, please be moichel me. Don't you understand? I had a bracha that you should take me to my chuppah. I wanted my siblings to have that bracha also. And that's why I waited. Koyach of Pesach is to take the bracha and see what we can do for someone else with it. And with that schus, may all of Klal Yisrael be zeicha to come to chuppah, we should all make simchas together. I was zeicha this week by the Shamiz Baruch to a shidduch with the daughter. That's why shidduchim are on my mind. So anyone's listening, all of Varapak and Flatbush, you're all invited to come to Vart Sunday night. I should tell them where it is also. Okay, but it should be simchas for all of Klal Yisrael together. If we think about each other and we reserve our brachas for each other, then that is not just wishful thinking. That will be a metzias. Kol Tovim Suris Tavis.